Today, we're diving into what is, without a doubt, one of the biggest stories of our time, the high-stakes rivalry between the United States and China. And let's be clear, this is so much more than a trade war. It's a fundamental battle over what the future is going to look like.
Wow, the era of hyper-globalization is over. That's a huge statement. It basically says that the world we've known for the last 30 or 40 years, this incredibly interconnected global economy, is being torn apart and replaced by something called geo-economic fragmentation. So let's unpack what that really means.
So the big question is, how on earth did we get here, right? How did a relationship that literally defined the age of globalization turn into the very thing that's now breaking it apart? To understand that, we've got to go back to the beginning.
The whole story really starts decades ago with something people now call the Grand Bargain. But here's the thing, it turns out this bargain was built on a massive, fundamental flaw right from the very start.
You see, from day one, both sides had completely different ideas about what they were doing. The U.S. had this core belief, this hope, really, that if they just brought China into the global economy, it would naturally become more open, more democratic, more like us. But China, they had a totally different playbook. For them, global integration was a powerful tool to build up national strength and tighten the party's control.
And this is what experts now call flawed integration. It was a partnership built on a total misunderstanding. It's like two people agreeing to play a game, but one thinks they're playing chess and the other thinks they're playing checkers. A collision down the line was almost guaranteed.
And that flawed integration wasn't just some abstract idea. Oh no. It had very real, very painful consequences that eventually triggered a massive economic rupture, a shockwave that would completely change politics in the United States.
Just look at this number, almost 2 million. That's how many American manufacturing jobs are estimated to have been lost to competition from Chinese imports, and that's just in the first 10 years after China joined the World Trade Organization. It was a staggering blow.
And you can see the sheer scale of this shift right here. The U.S. trade deficit with China just exploded. It went from $83 billion in 2001 all the way up to $347 billion by 2016. The economic relationship had become deeply and very visibly unbalanced.
Now, here's the political kicker, and this is so important. The pain from those lost jobs, it was concentrated. It hit specific towns, specific communities incredibly hard. But the benefit? Slightly cheaper t-shirts or TVs for everyone else, that was spread so thin you barely noticed it. And that imbalance, it created the perfect storm for a huge political backlash.
And in 2018, that backlash finally boiled over. The dam broke. Decades of simmering tension erupted into a full-blown trade war. First, tariffs on $34 billion of goods. Then a couple months later, bam, another $200 billion. Then the rates on those went up. It was a rapid, dramatic escalation that changed everything.
But this was never really just about tariffs on things like soybeans and steel. The conflict was about to shift into a new and, honestly, much more serious arena. A direct fight for the future of technology itself.
This is where the game completely changed. The rivalry moved beyond arguing over goods and into a high-stakes battle to control the absolute foundational technologies of our time. Things like artificial intelligence and, especially, the advanced semiconductor chips that power, well, everything.
And this led to a much more aggressive new strategy, what's known as the Chokepoint strategy. The idea is pretty ruthless. You identify the critical technologies your rival absolutely needs but can't make themselves, like the most advanced chips, and then you squeeze. This isn't just about playing defense anymore. This is about actively trying to slow your competitor down.
And here's how they're building that tech blockade. It's a full-court press. First, you block China from buying the most advanced AI chips. Then, you block them from buying the incredibly complex machines needed to make those chips. You even prevent American engineers from helping them. And the final crucial step, you build an alliance with key partners like the Netherlands and Japan to make sure you control every single critical link in that supply chain.
Now, all this tension isn't just happening in government buildings. It is forcing a massive, real-time reshuffling of the global economy. It's fundamentally changing how and where things get made all over the world.
Okay, so take a look at this. This is a snapshot of U.S. imports back in 2016, kind of the before times. As you can see, China was the undisputed king, the workshop of the world, making up over a fifth of everything America bought.
Now, fast forward to today. The whole picture has been redrawn. Mexico has actually jumped past China to become the #1 source of imports for the U.S. China's share has dropped dramatically, and you can see countries like Vietnam have more than doubled their slice of the pie. That's a huge reconfiguration in just a few short years.
But hold on, this doesn't mean the world is simply decoupling from China. It's way more complicated. It's more of a reconfiguration of dependency. So, yeah, the final assembly of a product might move to Mexico or Vietnam, but where are those new factories getting all their parts and components? Increasingly, they're getting them from China. The dependency's still there, it's just one step removed.
And this fragmentation isn't just about physical stuff. It's happening with money, too. China is very actively trying to build a parallel financial system. They're pushing for more global trade to be done in their own currency, they built their own alternative to the SWIFT payment network, and they're expanding the BRICS group of nations. The goal for them is pretty simple: create a world where they and their partners are less vulnerable to the power of the US dollar.
So, where's all of this headed? Where does this fractured world go from here? Well, when you look at the trends, you can start to see 3 very different possible futures for the global order taking shape.
The first possible future is something called managed strategic rivalry. You can think of it as a new Cold War, but with guardrails. The competition is intense for sure, especially in technology, but both sides are careful to manage it and keep it from spilling over into actual, direct conflict. It's tense, but it's stable.
The second possibility is a lot more dangerous. It's called systemic bipolarization. This is a future where the world literally splits in two. You have a US-led bloc and a China-led bloc, and each one has its own separate technology stack, its own currency systems, its own rules. A true digital iron curtain would fall across the globe. And the third path is, well, it's messier. Instead of 2 big blocks, the world splinters into multiple, self-reliant regional clusters. You'd have a North American hub, a European one, an East Asian one, and so on. Think of it less like a single global village and more like a planet of gated economic communities. But no matter which of these futures we end up in, one thing seems absolutely clear. The 40-year-long pursuit of pure economic efficiency, of making things as cheap as possible no matter what, that era is over. The new game is all about security and resilience. And that leaves all of us with a final, really important question to think about. In this new reconfiguring world, what is the true price of that resilience?